Mr. Begley, members of the board, we do have several items for board discussion this evening. Our first item is to have some discussion about presentations the board would like to see during the 2023-2024 school year. I did send an email just before the meeting with the schedule from last year. So if you are interested in seeing that, you are more than welcome to pull that up. Generally, we will, there are certain presentations that I think the board has decided would be annual presentations. One of those would be an open enrollment presentation. We do that every fall. We will continue to do that. Generally, we pull about 5 presentations from this list and sprinkle them throughout because there are so many standing presentations that will be a part of that schedule. So you each have 3 dots. Mrs. Gina Gentry Fletcher is over there ready to jot down any suggestions that you have, and once you have a list and you're ready to identify those, each of you will place your 3 dots accordingly. So this time I'll turn it over to Mr. Begley.
Yes, thank you. I think this is a great thing. It gives the board input and what we will be discussing. It's it may not be for every board, but I think for a highly functioning board like this, it's great that everyone here is comfortable enough and educated enough to ask for some input in what we're going to be discussing throughout the year. So to your point, I think open enrollment is always a topic. It has such a stigma to it. I still get questions about it, so those kind of ongoing topics are important. But here's a chance to add as times change, as new things come into the focus. So just kind of go around, ask for suggestions, and as he said, this is Gentry Fletcher will mark them down, and we'll start there.
I'll start. I think the ins and outs of school finance or, the economics of school financing. I think that's always good.
So do you see that different than the 5-year forecast?
I do. I think the 5-year forecast is like an overview of where the money goes and all of that, but I think more of a breakdown where you're kind of explaining some of the ins and outs. You're kind of breaking that down on a more on a level so that I think the public can understand. Because sometimes I think the 5-year forecast it's for those who have been paying attention consistently, but maybe for those who are not familiar with some of the obstacles that are coming our way. Like if you're going into what are the ramifications of expansions of vouchers, and how does phantom revenue actually impact communities. So just more of an in-depth conversation about financing and what do you see in those 5-year forecasts that's covered but isn't always broken down because of time.
Right. Right, I like that. Great.
I had something similar along those lines as far as like finance. And I hate to add another thing that potentially would land on Nancy's plate, but I thought it would be good to look at ESSER funds and like what funds we had during COVID that we will not be having going forward and how those programs are going to be impacted.
Great.
Yeah, because I think that would dovetail into like the breakdown of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, right. Whether that's 2 or 1, I think they're both great ideas. We'll figure out how to fit them in. Scott had one. He wanted me to mention the implementation of the reading program in the elementary schools. There were some questions around that, some concerns. I don't know where it's at. I don't know how it's going. And so maybe in the latter half of the year, once we've had a year plus in the program, maybe there's some data, maybe there's some thoughts. And then I had one, and I see it here as well as on my list, and I'd written the spotlight on elementary schools, and of course when we did the West Elementary program where we actually had our meeting there. And then the students came and presented and literally came to our tables and we were one-on-one. And we had just those precious 10 or 15 minutes of time with those students. And you got to see in their, little minds and their little hearts and what they were invested in. And I so much enjoyed that. So whether it's found here or another way, I really want to do that.
I was thinking about that too, that was so much fun, and the more we can do actually with students involved and whatnot, would be really fun. Otherwise, I was thinking, and I may have mentioned this in one of the prior years, and it might be something, maybe there's not enough info there, I don't know, to make a whole presentation, but I was thinking when I signed my daughter up for kindergarten, I was very confused as to what things I needed to sign up for and what I didn't. Like I signed up for Final Forms, and then I signed up for Pay Schools, and then I saw this parent portal, and I'm like, what the heck is that? Do I have to sign up for that? And then the schools all had sign up for Remind here, and connect with your teacher, and then connect with your school, but it would only let me connect with one but not the other. And so maybe like a little technology boot camp where we explain what all the different things our parents can sign up for and what they should sign up for, what's optional and whatnot. So maybe to help eliminate some confusion for newbies like I was,
So kind of like a breakdown of tools for parents, like
Yeah,
these are the
yeah.
tools you have access to.
Yeah, and then I
And
think-
this is the information you would get from each of these tools.
Yeah, and I think at one of our meetings, we were talking about Naviance, and I was like, I don't know what that is, like, should I have signed up for that? I don't know, so, yeah, it was a little confusing for me.
So if I can go next, I can dovetail on that only on the other end of the spectrum, right? With our older kids, right? So I wanted maybe a program on guidance counselors and their role. And, listen, I have 2 children here that recently graduated, and I got to know Mr. Yates very well, right? And Mrs. Braun and others in that department, and they're integral and involved in so many different things. I think a presentation about what their role is would be very helpful in how they can help guide, juniors and seniors and sophomores for that matter, as they look forward to education or other opportunities beyond school.
Is that specifically referring to guidance counselors at the high school? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, that is what I was thinking, and I get, we've added guidance counselors to the elementary schools and to different places, but I guess, at least my initial thought.
Yeah. And I think that's okay. We've had the elementary counselors here before
Yeah.
talking about what
Yeah.
they do, but I don't
true.
know that we've ever had
Right.
the high school counselors or someone talking about the roles the role that they play
Yeah.
and how important they are.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was actually thinking about that too, because I was thinking last night, like, how much guidance counselors have changed over the years. Like, when I was in high school, I mean, I didn't go to Fairfield, but you only saw the guidance counselor if you were in trouble. Like, if you're in academic trouble, and I know it's not like that anymore. Now it's really more like, let's see where you're gonna go after this and whatnot. So, yeah, I think that'd be very interesting.
And I hope people are taking advantage of those resources. We've got great people in place, and are they being utilized? Or is there a stigma out there, right? Right, yeah, absolutely.
What about a curriculum night? I know when kids get to a certain point in their academic careers, they start to, I guess, focus a little bit more on what path they're going to take. But sometimes, depending on what you want to do, getting into that path, I'll just say path, really starts much earlier, like 7th, 8th grade. Could we have like a curriculum night where we have some conversations about, if you're looking to go into, this kind of advanced academic path, these are the types of things that you probably want to look at, depending on what your career track is. there may be certain classes or certain things that you want to focus on. I'm not sure if we've had like an expanded conversation about it. I know we've done some things before, but things are so, it's just going to be really, really critical for kids to understand those choices and options, because we have CCP, you know, College Credit Plus, we have AP, we have general type classes, and a student really should know what that preparation really needs to be early. Like a parent, probably 5th, 6th grade, you really need to be thinking about it. Because you can opt in to certain math classes as you're an 8th grader. If you want your child to take a more rigorous math course in 8th grade, I believe you can opt in. So those are things that parents might benefit from knowing. So having a curriculum night where you kind of discuss what your options are. And also maybe having a conversation about what those extracurriculars are. We have a ton of clubs that we just, you know, basically assigned academic advisors for. With all those options, with all the names, there might be an opportunity to just kind of give some guidance, a brief explanation as to where a parent can go off and get that information. Because do you have to be in high school to get the information as to what those clubs are? If you're getting ready to, you know, have a freshman, how do they access that information? Because extracurriculars are so important if you're getting your college application together.
Along the lines of college applications, something, and I can't remember what the actual program's called, but the program where the students go to the universities in their senior year and take like half days, and then they're taking college credit courses for the other half of the day. So something, I can't remember what the program's called, forgive me, but just maybe a presentation on like how our students, like how they do in that program, how many students go to those programs, what colleges are part, or what community location universities are part of that program, and how like that,
CCP,
yeah.
college credit. What's it, college? Application, yeah.
Scott had also
Really-
referenced, I'm sorry.
I'm just going to help Gina
Yeah.
Gina a little bit, if you don't mind. Just kind of an overview of those opportunities for kids and how many people we have in those, how many students we have in those programs, and who we have partnerships with, that type thing. And that might be like an item for board discussion versus a presentation, sharing of information too. But yeah, that's definitely, we can do that.
Mr. Clark had also referenced Hope Squad and the ID Project, and how important those programs are, and maybe a presentation on that.
Hope Squad.
One of the things I was kind of thinking about is maybe it would be interesting to have sort of like a day in the life type of thing where, you know, if we had a teacher that kind of volunteered to say, you know, here's my breakdown of every day, and here's how I plan for my classes, and realistically, this is when I get up to get to school, and this is when I come home, I'm grading papers or whatever, and this is the time I stopped, you know. But it wouldn't just have to be teachers, like a day in the life of a custodian, or a day in the life of an administrator, or, you know, a treasurer. But, you know, so people could have that kind of insight. And, you know, I was just thinking, I've taught college classes as an adjunct instructor before, and if I was preparing for like a 3-hour class in the evenings, it would sometimes take me 3 hours just to come up with my lesson plan for that class. So 3 or more hours, depending on how many PowerPoints I need to put together and whatnot. So maybe it would be interesting to kind of get some insight what different, you know, employees in the district do on a daily basis.
I guess along those lines, I had thought about our SROs and how important they are and how impactful they are in the lives of the students. I don't know if that's an entire presentation or not, but one or two of those gentlemen coming in and talking about, even if it's just anecdotal stories about what's going on and because they're more than just standing there for security, right? They really play an important role, I think, and they're a valuable asset to the district. I'm out. Anyone else?
I think,
You're kind of thinking about what Mrs. Shorter had suggested with the curriculum night, as far as, college path and whatnot. What if, like, once a year, we had maybe a prominent graduate agree to come back, and not necessarily like they're a rocket scientist or something, but maybe they graduated from here and they became a very successful business owner, or they went to the military and now they're retired and they want to speak on their experience, and so that any kids or parents who are watching, most likely parents, who are watching will kind of, if their kid expresses interest, they can say, oh yeah, there was this really interesting talk given by so-and-so, and they were explaining what you need to do if you want to prepare for that kind of thing.
I think that's a great idea. Before COVID, I used to go out to the kids. We used to do our little lunch and learns. And Brian introduced me to a young man who was not an auditor.
An actuary?
He was an actuary, yes. And just learning about actuary science was really, really pretty interesting. So I could see that dovetailing and kind of like being supportive of careers and knowing what your options are. Yeah, because there's things that are options that kids may have no idea about. That would be a great way to get some exposure. I really like that.
It looks like we're out of paper. Any more ideas? All right, then I think we're going to come over with our dots and place them on the left side of whatever topics we like to kind of give the administration a feel for what we prioritize in this list. And then over the course of the next year, we'll fit these in, maybe, what'd you say, 4 or 5 of them? Or,
Yeah,
whatever we can.
yeah, we're work them in, yeah.
All right.
And like I said, some of them we can turn into items for board discussion if we run out of space for presentations, yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Curriculum, college applications, visits, and that sort of thing. School finance, so those 3.
So school finance, college apps, and then the reading, implementation of reading, or which curriculum?
Curriculum.
Oh, curriculum 9.
Thank you. This becomes what we do.
Back is me so bad. Thank you. Yes, thank you so much.
All right. We got a couple of things up there to work with.
Yeah, we're good.
Great.
Lance, you're gonna have to come back up here. All right, our next item for board discussion, transportation processes and procedures. I'll turn it over to Mr. Perry as he gets situated over there.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, Mr. Begley, and members of the board. I wanted to take this opportunity to discuss some great work in the transportation department that is taking place recently. With the recent hiring of Jeanette Flick as the director and as David Oglesby as the assistant director, we are taking this opportunity to look at our current processes and procedures within the transportation department. One of the areas of focus is routing. The routing of buses not only for our Fairfield city schools, but also for our private and parochial schools. We've had discussion that any changes that will be made will need to have minimal impact to the ride time of students. Through this process, we have discovered that there may be 3 private high schools that may be outside the required 30-minute travel time. Jeanette and the team will complete an official timing of these routes, and if these schools' travel time in a bus is greater than 30 minutes, the district is not required to provide transportation. If that in fact is the case, we will communicate directly with any schools of any changes that may be in place. Another piece is a bus driver handbook. Specific handbook is an important resource. This is something that came out from our audit through OSBA just over a year ago. Bill and Jeanette began the process last year to update our current handbook. Jeanette and David will continue this process and have determined they would like to create an additional handbook for the office staff as well. The goal is to have both of these handbooks completed and updated by January, but continue to update them annually so that we do not fall behind on some key pieces that may change throughout the year, such as names and jobs and positions. The last area of focus I am highlighting this evening are the trainings that we are providing to our transportation staff. Last year, we provided de-escalation and PBIS training. We will provide those trainings again this year. In addition, we are adding the topics of proper radio etiquette, emergency situations specific to transportation, and our student discipline procedures. The PBIS and student discipline procedures are 2 topics that we are trying to mirror similar vocabulary as our schools so that students are receiving similar messaging. We found this to be very successful this year and created a lot of dialogue with our drivers, with the building administration as well. We found out a lot, both sides actually through that communications were able to find out similar issues that they were having in the building as well as on the buses, and able to collaborate solutions. I view our transportation staff as unique professionals in their transportation-related job duties. I'm excited about these changes and hope that our transportation staff will see this as support as the district continues to provide transportation-specific trainings. So, Bill Westerbeck was here for 32 years, ran the department, did an amazing job. We found ourselves in our unique position to not only replace the director, but then also, because we were able to hire within, we hired a new assistant director who came from other school districts with other ideas. So we really are talking about the opportunities that we may be able to look at everything from a different lens and continue to tweak and make changes. In addition to, while we are identifying such things, is communicating with our drivers and chauffeurs to get them on board, because what we learned last year as well, one of the things that we did was we had all of the drivers write their name on a piece of paper and decorate it, and then put one fact about themselves, their favorite sport team, their favorite color, something of that nature. And we had them, we laminated it and put magnets on it and put it above where they sit. And through that, we found that we were able to engage with students on a different way. And the feedback from the drivers, that was actually a suggestion from a driver. So we're trying to continue those lines of communication because they have great ideas. And we need to do a better job of listening to those ideas. So again, with those trainings in particular, one of the topics that comes up is that every month we have a safety meeting. And we've done a great job of focusing on topics consistently each month and building on those topics as we go. But through that process, we also identified we'd like to take a window, a specific time to start the year, and we're going to focus on that, and we see that happening annually moving forward. So all of these things right now, I believe, is we are getting better. So it's exciting, which is why I wanted to share this with the board. So, do you have any questions?
I had a question about, you said there are maybe 3 high schools that are outside the 30-minute window.
Yes, ma'am.
How's that calculated? Do you calculate from the student's house or the whole route?
It is from the school of residence.
Okay.
So a high school would be the drive time from Fairfield
Okay.
High School to the private school.
Okay.
And it has to be done in the morning in a bus, which complicates things, you know how that goes. So there's a lot of guidelines for that. We did reach out to Mr. Palmer, who did our audit for us, to make sure we understood all of the steps and make sure that we were checking all the boxes properly. And at this point in time, we're just seeing what the timing is. And of course, if it's under, you know, that's well within the parameters of the guidelines that we need to provide transportation. But when I asked Jeanette, I said, do you recall the last time we even looked at any of these? And she could not recall. So I think it's just one of those, it's not something I see us doing every year, but it's something we haven't done in quite a long time. So just kind of catching up on that.
Sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
A great report, thank you very much. And I think your talk about communicating and a consistent message in terms of positive behaviors, disciplinary, and then kids are hearing the same thing from the teacher that they're hearing from the bus driver and so on. That's so good, we should have been doing it all along, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great stuff, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item for board discussion is a financial update. This time I'll turn it over to Mrs. Lane.
Thank you. So the board may remember at our May 18th board meeting, I presented the 5-year forecast, and I said, now, I'm going to bring back in July an updated forecast for you to approve once the budget bill gets released. That was my plan until all the pieces of that budget bill came out and found that we need to analyze it a little bit more than what the time has allowed since that was passed on July 3rd. So tonight, in the interim, I thought I'm going to give you an update as far as how we finished out our fiscal year of '23 and kind of what we know so far. So for 2023, our revenues actually came in a little bit higher than projected, so about $350,000 better. And our expenditures came in lower, about $1.9 million lower than what was projected. So overall, our balance improved a little bit by $2.2 million, better than what we had projected in May. So that's good news. So then, again, the budget bill came into play on the July 3rd, and what we had hoped for them to use were those 22 base cost inputs to update the data, the information that gets put into that formula. That did happen, so we want to thank the legislature for doing that. They're keeping that fair school funding plan in place and continuing the phase-in of that. So that's good news for our district. With the budget bill, they did some financial simulations that were released, and if you look at those, you think, wow, our district is on there for 2024 to gain $5.3 million from the state. In the second year of the biennium, they have us estimated to increase by about $1 million, an additional $1 million. From preliminary analysis of those simulations, I don't believe that those are accurate, somewhat. But again, we have to look at more of the details. And part of the reason for that is the state uses a certain set of data, let's say it's 2 years old, Our property valuations have gone up. Our enrollment has changed. The federally adjusted gross income of our community has changed. They don't update that all the time. They use one set of numbers, and sometimes that's data that's old. So when I tried to simulate what might be happening, it appears that the $5.3 million for this year may really be $4.4 million, depending on how things flush out with the data that they use, that with the school funding formula uses for us. So $4.4 million is great too, not $5.3 million, but we'll take it, right? So that's something, again, I'm analyzing more. I don't have all the facts yet to figure that out, but we're working on that. There's going to be some state meetings to be able to give us more information about how to calculate that. The second year of the biennium, once the property valuations are set after this year, that increase that we don't quite know what it's going to be yet, that has actually a detrimental effect to us because it makes our district look wealthier than what it is. So if it looks wealthier, that means state funding goes down. So that $1 million that they're projecting for us to gain next year, in preliminary estimates, it's looking like we may lose $800,000. But again, it depends on what happens with our enrollment and the property values. And so it's great to think we're going to gain more money, but I'm not so sure that that's really going to happen. So we're keeping an eye on all that, and based on all that information and what simulations I've been able to put together, it appears that we will not have to be on the ballot in November, this November. Our balance for 25-26, as you know, was a negative $6 million, I think it was at the May forecast. Let's see. Yeah, $6.1 million. That number now has become positive based on what our simulations are showing. So that delays us having to go on the ballot in November. That may mean we may need to be on the ballot next year in 2024. But again, as we get more information and I am able to simulate some of those inputs a little bit better, I'll have a better picture for us. Definitely, hopefully by November. Again, those property valuations, we may not know that information in November when I have to do the forecast then, but we'll just do the best with what information we have at that time. So again, I think it's August 1st. There's a big meeting where state organizations actually drill down into this budget bill and provide hopefully more analysis for us to help us with our forecasting. So that is my update for now.
Is that acceptable to the board? In other words, are we okay not going on a ballot in November?
I mean, I am. I have a question. How does HB 33, I know that's a separate pot of money for vouchers, but if that passes, do you think they're going to be some changes made?
As far as?
Like, the projections that they're showing now, will those change if HB?
I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm showing some slight declines in our enrollment based on more vouchers being available to students. So, not drastically, but 30, 40, 50 kids maybe. I mean, we don't know until it actually happens. But again, if I'm wrong and we stay about the same, then that's going to have a better impact for us. So, a lot of questions right now.
I think that's what it comes down to. I'm very pleased to hear you say you don't feel we need to run a levy in November, and we seem to be in agreement with that, because you're right, it would be so hard to present facts to the public that we just don't have.
Right.
Yeah. Because there's still a lot of communication and misunderstandings about the property.
Absolutely. The ramifications of the property tax
ramifications of
increase.
that. 'Cause I just heard this week that there's going to be another increase. So I think the public probably needs time to sort all of that out. It would really be much better for us to not be able to go on the ballot. I'm happy about that. especially in lieu of all the
Sure.
stuff, all the churn with the property increases. Have you heard anything about another increase?
I mean, what I read in the journal, just like everybody else, that the county is still not happy. They're still trying to do, even though it didn't pass in the budget bill, the amendments that were put in there, they're still trying to figure something out, but we'll see.
At one point, I recall seeing a calculator on, I don't remember if it was the auditor's or the treasurer's website that kind of helped you figure out, I can't find it now, so I don't know
They probably took it down.
if it got broken, you know, or what, but, yeah, so I'm fine with it not being on this year's ballot. I don't think it would have gone over well with all these questions about the property tax increase and whatnot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.